Welcome to week one of English 102. For those of you who are returning after completing English 101, I welcome you back and look forward to spending these next 10 weeks with you. For those of you who may be joining us midstream here in English 102, I welcome you as well. And I trust that this is going to be a very beneficial study for you. English 101 and 102 are introductory English courses, and they should be relatively easy for all of us as we go through these, because a lot of it is going to be simply review of things that you've already learned pertaining to the English language. What I would encourage you to do before you even begin looking at this particular video on week one, if you have not already done so, I would encourage you to go and read the syllabus and to read my welcome so that you will have a grasp on what this course is going to entail, where we're going to be going with the course, and what we're going to try to be accomplishing in this course. So if you could go ahead and stop this video if you've not already read those two documents, the syllabus and my welcome, then please do that before you proceed from this point on. It will give you a better understanding of what we're going to strive to be accomplishing as we spend these 10 weeks together. Now, if you have already read those two documents, then let's go ahead and dive into week one and our study for this week. Our study for week one is going to focus on sentence structures. We're going to focus our attention this week on 4 different topics relative to sentence structures. First of all, we're going to talk about 4 types of sentences. Then we're going to focus on subjects and predicates. We'll turn our attention then to direct objects, and finally this week to the subject of indirect objects. How is a sentence defined? When we use the word sentence, what exactly are we referring to? What are we to understand as we think of a sentence? Well, a good working definition of a sentence is simply that a sentence starts with a capital letter and then it finishes with a period, a question mark, or an exclamation point. Now, those are the mechanics of a sentence structure. Just because we've got a string of words, the first word begins with a capital letter and finishes with either one of these punctuation forms, that doesn't necessarily mean that it is a sentence. There has to be more to it than that. But all sentences will begin with a capital letter and always finish with one of these punctuation marks, a question mark, an exclamation point, or a period. We also need to understand that a sentence consists of an independent clause. That's the reason that I said that you can have a string of words that begins with a capital letter and ends with correct punctuation, and it still not be a sentence. A sentence must consist of an independent clause. An independent clause consists of a subject, a verb, and is a complete thought. You can have a string of words that do not make a complete thought, and therefore that string of words would not be a sentence. Consider this simple sentence. The boy found his bicycle. In this string of words, we see that the first word begins with a capital letter. We see that there's a period at the end. So the mechanics of this string of words certainly would lead us to believe that it is a sentence. But then we have to ask the question, is this string of words an independent clause? In other words, does it have a subject, a verb, and does it have a complete thought? Well, we see that it does have a subject, boy. We see also that it has a verb, an action word, found. And then we see that it also makes a complete thought. The boy found his bicycle. Now, if we took off those two words at the end, his bicycle. The boy found. Well, that would not be a complete thought. We need to know what he found in order for it to be a complete sentence. So this string of words, the boy found his bicycle, is indeed an independent clause consisting of a subject and a verb. Now we can also think of a sentence being defined by the purpose of the sentence. There's a declarative sentence, and that type of sentence simply makes a statement. He shall strengthen your heart. It's just making a sentence. It's a declaration. So when we look at this, we've got a subject, he. We've got a verb, shall strengthen. So we have your heart concluding the sentence, so it makes a complete thought. So this is indeed a sentence, and it falls into the classification of a declarative sentence because it's making a statement. The second type of sentence, the second purposeful type of sentence, is an interrogative sentence. An interrogative sentence asks a question. Whom shall I fear? So we see here that this is asking a question. Who is it that I should fear? Whom shall I fear? The third type of sentence is the imperative sentence, and the imperative sentence gives a command. Wait on the Lord. Be of good courage. These are imperatives in the sense that they're giving a command from one person to another person. Now, when you look at these two sentences, you see that there's something missing. What's the subject of that first sentence? Wait on the Lord. Well, the subject is you. In this imperative sentence giving a command, it's one person speaking to another person, so the you, the subject of the sentence, is understood. We would not say, you wait on the Lord. If we did, it would be more of an exclamation than it would be an imperative sentence. But the subject in these two sentences is understood to be you. You wait on the Lord. You be of good courage. So these are thought to be sentences that fill all the classifications and qualifications of a sentence, and yet we don't have a subject that is actually written out in the sentence. You wait on the Lord. You be of good courage. And finally, the fourth type of sentence is an exclamatory sentence. And this type of sentence expresses strong feeling. Wait, I say, on the Lord. So this type of sentence, differing from the imperative sentence where we're just simply giving a command, this is more of a strong feeling where I'm actually adding great emphasis and great emotion to what I'm saying. You, wait, I say, on the Lord. And so sometimes it might be a little difficult to determine if a sentence is an imperative or an exclamatory, but more often than not, it will be easy to detect and determine which of those two it is. Let's turn our attention now to subjects and predicates. A sentence, for it to be a sentence, must contain a subject and a predicate. Now, you may already have thought of the question, well, what's the difference between a verb and a predicate? Well, a verb is the action word in a sentence, but a predicate contains the verb and all of its modifiers. So, a sentence must contain both a subject and a predicate, and without these, it's not a sentence. The subject is what or whom the sentence is about, and the predicate contains the verb and tells something about the subject. Now again, look at our sentence. The boy found his bicycle. In this sentence, we have the subject, boy, and then we have the predicate. Now, contained within the predicate is the verb, found. The boy found. Well, what did the boy find? He found his bicycle. So that entire grouping of words, found his bicycle, is the predicate of this sentence. It's the verb plus the modifiers, and it contains the verb and tells something about the subject. What does it tell us about the subject? Well, it tells us that the boy, the subject of the sentence, found his bicycle. Now we're going to give our attention to all of these different types of subjects and predicates. We've got simple subjects, complete subjects, compound subjects, and complete compound subjects. And then we have the same thing with the predicates. A simple predicate, a complete predicate, a compound predicate, and a complete compound predicate. So please make note of all of these, because we are going to be going back and reviewing these, and you're going to be asked to write some sentences with all of these different types of subject and predicate combinations. And you'll also be quizzed about it in this week's quiz. So pay careful attention and perhaps write down some notes at this time to make sure you understand all of these different terms. Let's begin by looking at subjects. The simple subject is the word or group of words that acts, is described, or is acted upon. In this sentence, we see the simple subject, fear. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Now we see a lot of other words here, and they're all related in some way, and we're going to look at those a little further in a few minutes, but let's just consider here that we're looking at the simple subject. The subject of this sentence is fear. Now, one way that we can find a subject, if the subject is not as clear as it is in this particular sentence, we can find the subject in a sentence by asking the question, what is? We look at the verb. In this sentence, the verb is the word is. What is the beginning of wisdom? Well, it is the fear. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. So the simple subject in this sentence is fear. Now let's use that same sentence and determine what the complete subject is. The complete subject is the simple subject and everything in the sentence that modifies or describes that simple subject. So we've already determined that the word fear is the simple subject. Well, now we look at all of the words that might modify fear. Well, we've got the word the. The, of course, is definite article, but in this sentence, the is used as an adjective. What fear? The fear. And then we have a prepositional phrase modifying fear. What fear? The fear of the Lord. So that entire statement there, the fear of the Lord, is what we would call the complete subject of this sentence. Now let's consider a compound subject. A compound subject simply consists of two or more nouns or pronouns. Look at this sentence. The king and all the children of Israel dedicated the house of the Lord. So let's look first for the simple verb, dedicated. Well, who or what dedicated? Well, the king dedicated and the children dedicated. So we've got a compound subject, king and children dedicating the house of the Lord. And now let's finally give our attention to a complete compound subject. The compound subject is king and children. The complete compound subject consists of two or more nouns or pronouns and all of their modifiers. So in this sentence, the king and all the children of Israel is the complete compound subject. We've got the king and children as the compound subject, but all of those words, the king and all the children of Israel, is the complete compound subject, because all of that phrase is included in giving an explanation as to who dedicated the house of the Lord. So again, we've got a simple subject, we've got a complete subject. The simple subject is just the one word that describes whatever that sentence is about. The complete subject is that simple subject and all of its modifiers. Then a compound subject is one or two or more nouns or pronouns, and then the complete compound subject is those two or more nouns or pronouns and all of their modifiers. So now let's turn our attention to predicates, and we're going to look at them in the same way as we did the subjects. First of all, let's think of a simple predicate. The simple predicate is only the verb. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. So, the simple predicate in this sentence is leads. It's the action word telling us what he is doing. The complete predicate contains the verb and all of its modifiers. And you can see in this sentence, the subject stands alone, and everything else in his sentence is part of the complete predicate. He, subject, leads. Well, what does he lead, or where does he lead? Well, first of all, he leads me in the paths of righteousness. Secondly, he leads me for his name's sake. All of that, all of those terms and phrases modify or give explanation or description to the word leads. So leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake would all be included in the complete predicate. Let's give our attention now to a compound predicate. A compound predicate consists of two or more verbs. We saw the same thing with a compound subject. A compound subject consists of two or more nouns or pronouns. Well, a compound predicate consists of two or more verbs. Look at this sentence. He stood and blessed all the assembly of Israel with a loud voice. So we've got two action words, stood, blessed. That is a compound predicate. He, the subject, is doing two things. He stood, he blessed. A complete compound predicate consists of two or more verbs and all of their modifiers. He is the subject, and everything else in this sentence is part of the predicate. Now, the compound part of this predicate is stood, blessed, two action words. But stood and blessed all the assembly of Israel with a loud voice is part of the complete predicate. He stood and blessed what? All the assembly. He stood and blessed all the assembly of Israel. He stood and blessed with a loud voice. All of those modify and give explanation to the predicate, stood and blessed. Okay, we've come to a turning point again. Let's give our attention now for just a few minutes to the subject of direct objects. A direct object is a noun, pronoun, or a group of words that completes the meaning of a transitive verb. Now remember, a transitive verb is a verb that transfers action from the subject to an object. So anytime you have a transitive verb, you have to have a direct object. A direct object receives the action of the verb. Therefore, again, the verb must be an action word. It cannot be a state of being verb. It must be an action verb. In order to find the direct object in a sentence, all we have to do is ask whom or what after the verb. Consider these simple sentences. I found $1. He saw a falling star. She bought a car. Joe dropped his coffee. Well, in all of those, the transitive verb requires an object to complete the verb's meaning. We wouldn't just say, I found, he saw, she bought, Joe dropped. There's got to be an object to give explanation to and to complete the thought of these sentences. I found, what did I find? I found $1. So dollar is the direct object. He saw what? He saw a star. Now he saw a falling star, but he saw a star. She bought a car. Joe dropped his coffee. All of these transitive verbs have to have a direct object to complete the verb's meaning. Now, if no word answers the question whom or what after the verb, the sentence doesn't have a direct object. So we can always ask the question pertaining to a verb, is someone or something receiving the action of this verb? If it does, then it has a direct object that is receiving the action of that action verb. So now, in relation to a direct object, what is an indirect object? An indirect object is a noun or pronoun that precedes the direct object, and it's a word that tells to whom or to what or for what the action of the verb is done. Please note this. This statement is so absolutely crucial. You must have a direct object in order to have an indirect object. You cannot have an indirect object without a direct object. Look at this sentence. Samantha gave Kelly the brochure. All right, Samantha gave something. Gave what or gave whom? Well, Samantha gave the brochure. The brochure is what Samantha gave, so brochure is the direct object. Then we can ask the question, gave the brochure to whom or to what? Well, she gave the brochure to Kelly. So Kelly is the indirect object. Samantha didn't give Kelly. She gave Kelly something. Samantha gave Kelly the brochure. So in this sentence, we have a direct object, the word that's receiving the action, and we have an indirect object, the one to whom the brochure was given. An indirect object can never be in a prepositional phrase. Now note the difference in the wording of this sentence. Samantha gave the brochure to Kelly. That little phrase, to Kelly, is a prepositional phrase. Kelly is the object of the preposition to. So in this sentence, Kelly is not the indirect object. Kelly is the object of the preposition. So Samantha gave the brochure. Well, brochure in this sentence is still the direct object, but it doesn't have an indirect object. Samantha gave Kelly the brochure. Well, she gave the brochure, and Kelly's the one who received it, so we have a direct object and an indirect object. But in the second sentence, Samantha gave the brochure to Kelly. We have a direct object and an object of the preposition. An indirect object is so important for us to understand. Now, one other thing that you need to understand about it is that indirect objects may be compound. There can be more than one indirect object in a sentence. And again, just looking at that same sentence, Samantha gave Kelly and Amanda the brochure. So we have a compound indirect object, Kelly and Amanda. Let's think just for a moment about a couple of important points to remember about direct objects and indirect objects. Always find the direct object first. Now, the reason we say that and emphasize that is simply because if there's no direct object, then there can be no indirect object. You must have a direct object in order to have an indirect object. And secondly, direct objects and indirect objects always fall in the predicate of a sentence. Always. Indirect objects and direct objects will always, of necessity, fall in the predicate of a sentence. Now, what have we covered this week? We talked about 4 types of sentences: declarative, imperative, interrogative, and exclamatory. We've talked about subjects and predicates and all the different categories that we see with subjects and predicates. We've talked about direct objects. We've also talked about indirect objects. Now, that may seem like quite a bit to cover in one lesson, but I think, again, this is probably mostly review for most of us. At this point in time, you're now ready to take this week's quiz. Remember now, I told you needed to go back and read the syllabus and my welcome, because in that, you've already noted that there are some differences for those of you who were in 101 that are going to be different in 102. In 102, we're going to, again, have a reading assignment. We're going to have the video, and we're also going to have a weekly assignment. But on top of that, this quarter, you're also going to have a weekly quiz. Now, again, let me remind you of how this quiz is going to work. You can use all of your notes if you've written down notes, whatever. If you've got your textbook open, all of that is fine and well. You can use anything at your disposal. But you will only have one attempt at the quiz each week, and you will have 1 hour to complete the quiz. So once you open the quiz, you must complete it within an hour. Now, an hour is plenty of time to complete these quizzes. There's going to probably be 20 questions on each weekly quiz. And so make sure that you have a full hour at your disposal when you sit down to take the quiz, because once you start, you cannot stop. Once you start, you can't save it. Once you start, you must complete it. So be aware of that and take the quiz, and the quizzes are going to be averaged out and they will be a part of your final grade. And so you need to make sure you're taking into consideration all that you need to do. Review as much as you can each week prior to taking each week's quiz, and I'm sure you'll do well on each of them. Also, on your weekly assignment, I'm going to be giving you a list of sentences that I would like for you to write, and those can be done as an online activity, and I will be grading those hopefully week to week. Sometimes I get a little bit behind on the grading, but hopefully I'll be able to keep up with it as best I can. And again, after you've read the welcome and the syllabus, if there are any questions, please contact me by email or by message on Moodle, or you can give me a telephone call if you feel that's necessary. I want to be here for you, and I want to help you as much as I can. So, again, welcome to 102. God bless you in your studies, and I look forward to spending these next 10 weeks with you.